Hey everybody, welcome to lunch break, and it's Thursday. We took last Thursday off because I don't know about you guys, but I was just busy stuffing myself with stuffing. I mean, in turkey and
Amen.
all the good stuff, right?
Yes.
How'd you guys have a good Thanksgiving?
Well, I did get to stuff myself with the good things I'm eating because I'm working through a health
Oh,
trial.
you are,
Yeah.
Oh
So
man, so you have a restrictive diet right now.
I do, but my daughters were amazing. They made food that I can eat, and I was able to eat it, and so I had a great time. My girls were home,
Right.
and so family got together. We did. Our family was able to stay within the restriction orders.
Mhm.
So it just happens that we were
I
three
was
families.
I was at home. I was at my parents' home, and they had the spread out on a table, and I look over and my daughter has the pepper shaker, and
Oh,
she's just
no.
peppering the turkey for a solid 30 seconds. Like just peppering the whole turkey. I ran over there, and the whole turkey was kind of ruined. And I asked my dad. I said, "Hey, how was that turkey?" He said, "I thought of your daughter every single time I ate a bite."
Oh no.
pretty funny.
Indigestion, right?
Yeah. So,
I did the opposite probably of Pastor Tom. I ate everything I possibly could
Mhm.
and enjoyed it very much. Had multiple desserts and
Uh,
I didn't worry about my health at all. I'm probably going to think about that later in life, but
Yeah.
that's the way I do Thanksgiving.
You know what kicks it off every year? Halloween kicks it off because how many of you, I mean, you steal your kids' Halloween candy, right?
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it.
We, my wife and I just kept going in there and just grabbing. My daughter's gonna watch this someday and say, "You guys are stealing our Halloween candy." Yes, we were.
Facts.
So we start there. That gives me like a sugar problem, and then I get to Thanksgiving. It's designed. This whole season is designed to make us unhealthy.
And why stop? People always ask me about when should I start dieting. I go, you definitely shouldn't do it between Halloween and Valentine's
Right.
Day. My daughters used to hide their candy.
Yeah, that's
They,
smart.
oh, they did. They
That's
would hide
very
it. They're like,
smart.
Dad, you have no control. And I am.
So let me introduce you guys to our guests today. Some of you know them already, but we have Pastor Tom Touchstone with us, and we have Jay Tude, who is Justin Greer,
Yep.
who is the director of the junior high ministry at VBF, and Tom is one of our executive pastors, or our executive pastor. And a lot of people don't know this about Tom. I always like to say back in 1985, he was Mr. California. So when I first met Tom, he this was a few years after that, but he's still in great shape, but he was still a freak of nature
Yeah,
at that
freak.
point. And but he taught me how to weightlift, which I put into practice for quite a few years.
You still do.
Well, not really. I need to get back into it. I'm
You got
waiting.
good genetics.
Well,
Josh.
I ordered a barbell, and it's taking forever to get there. So as soon as it comes, then I'll start hitting it.
It's the shipping
Excuses.
season, right?
Yeah.
I know. So we're going to talk today with these guys. They're going to actually start their own show next Thursday, and that's going to
Yes.
be at 3 o'clock. And you guys are going to focus more on men.
Men.
Yeah,
and-
it's entitled The Man Show. We're just gonna focus on men, and from the cool thing about it to me is it's men from all different walks of life,
Yes.
and I think anyone who watches can relate because we struggle as men. And for one, there's one thing I know about men: we're not great communicators of our feelings, and we're not gonna just go to another bro and be like, "Hey, this is how I feel when I get home and I'm stressed." Like we're not gonna do that, but we can talk about how we do our daily routines with all these different men from different walks. A man watching can chime in and be like, "Oh, I can relate to that. I feel like that sometimes," without having to open up all the way, which I know us men aren't comfortable with, but we can do that for you on
Well,
the show.
and I love the fact that you guys are pairing up because Justin, how old are you?
I'm 32.
32.
32.
You have young children at home, young wife. So you are definitely representing the young man's journey, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And Pastor Tom, your daughters are both
And
adults.
one's 21, one's 25. I'm 62,
Yeah.
and
And they're out of the house. They're doing
out of
their
the
thing.
house. Well, right now, my youngest is home, but they are old enough. They're out of the house, and my daughter's moving to Nashville.
Right. So you guys have different struggles and you guys have different things, and then you guys also have a lot of guests that are lined up to come on the show. So that's going to start next Thursday at 3 o'clock. We'll still do lunch break at noon, and then we'll have a little gap. So any of you women that are watching, encourage your husbands, encourage the men in your life to watch this. Your sons, whoever it is that could watch this show, because I think they will definitely benefit on it. But today we're going to focus a little bit on men, and so if a woman is watching right now, I don't want you to turn it off because sometimes it's good for women to understand what men are going through, right?
Yeah, I 100%. I think women should watch even the Man Show
Mhm.
because we don't get each other. So
Right.
if this was a woman's show, I believe in training for my marriage, I should be watching it to see what the opposite sex is thinking like, and maybe if a woman is watching our show, they can go, that's why my husband reacts like
Right.
that, or that's the stress he's carrying, things
Right.
like that.
My wife Tiffany will say sometimes, because she knows I heads up some of our men's ministry, she goes, "You should have me come talk to the men. I represent the other
Yeah,
half of them,
right.
and they probably need to hear from a woman about a woman than a man about a man. And she goes, maybe you should go talk to the women's ministry."
So we're all married here. Have you guys ever had the struggle of your wife wanting to vent to you and tell you what's wrong, and then as men we think, I have a solution for that, and we
We're
jump
fixers.
in
We're
and
fixers.
we try to fix it,
Gosh,
right? We try to
yes.
help, but then they're like, I don't want the
don't-
solutions right now. What I
Yes.
want is I want you to listen. Have you guys ever been there?
Oh, it is. And actually, Josh, I created something for our men's ministry. I made a little card. And on one side, it says fix, and the other side, it says listen. And I gave it to men to give to their significant others. And so as they gave it to them, I said, now ask your wife. I asked my wife when I first did them, I go, so honey, when we have a conversation, flip it to the fix side or to the listen side. And 99.9% of the time, it's on the listen side,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
women
yes.
pull us men out of our skin because we're waiting to jump in, and that's not our strength as
Right.
far as being patient. So we want to come in to fix, but most of the time our wives or our women
Well-
want us to listen.
Right.
And so I've only got to listen one time. I fix one time.
Mhm.
My wife one time looked at me, she goes, I want you to fix this. I go, no way. I was like, this is my
This is what I was
opportunity.
built for.
And it was so 'cause
Well, it's funny. I spend most of my days having conversations, meetings, doing stuff like this, and so I get home and I'm tired. You
Yeah.
know, I'm dead, and I will somehow hover towards the back bedroom, and eventually I have a PlayStation controller in my hand, and I'm playing.
That's one of my biggest
Video games.
struggles that I'm working through and learning is because yes, in our profession, I have dealt with so many other people's problems during the day.
Yeah.
When I get home, my wife has the kids were wild, or,
Right.
or something happened at her job, and she wants to vent to me and get what I've given the population all day long: empathetic, responsive, a prayerful response. And I'm really just so emotionally drained that I'm ready to cut off from all emotion.
Right.
I'm ready. I want to zone completely
So
out.
I've had the conversation. My wife and I have had conversations about this exact thing. So I ask her. I say, "Hey, are you good if I go play video games or if I go chill out for a little bit?" And she'll say yes, or she'll never say no. But you know, there's a reaction there. If she doesn't say yeah, whatever. I know that she wants me to stick around. So then I'll just go do something else, and I'll come back and I'll talk to her. I've disciplined my mind
Yes.
to ask her questions and listen to what she's going to say. And I'm not a good listener. And so for me, I had to intentionally do that with
Yeah.
my wife. And it's made a big difference.
Same here, fellas. The one and I'm telling you, I learned this in the last 2 weeks. You got to do something first, too. Before you get into that relax, you either got to tune into her emotionally
Mhm.
or what's worked for me. I get home and the first thing I'm doing is the dishes because she cooked. And I
Mm.
just learned this. I
Right.
had not done this ever, you guys, but I just figured it out. And it's just way more peaceful. I'm telling you,
Yep.
just taking that little burden off
And
of
it's
her
so
of
much
doing the
better when
dishes.
they don't have to ask you to do it. You just do it on your own.
And I'm a firm, like the arguments in our house, I'm like, if you just tell me to do the dishes, I'll do the dishes.
Right.
But you just sit there and get all mad. Like, that's my thing. And I finally
That's
humbled
funny.
myself this week
Yeah.
and was like, okay, I'm just going to do the dishes.
Right.
I'm going to take that job from
Yeah.
her. And I can just tell doing the dishes took so much stress off my wife. It made me feel so convicted.
Well, it
I
takes
was like,
stress
oh,
off,
Lord,
and
I
then it
gotta
takes
do
stress
this
off
more.
of you. Not that you're doing it for personal gain, but I mean, you do these things, and then you don't have to. Because how many of you guys know that when you don't do the things you're supposed to be doing at home, it builds.
Oh, yeah.
It builds and builds and builds, and then in my world, it ends up in a full blown argument. You know, my wife and I, when we fight.
You guys
you
go
know?
at it.
We've had to learn to tone it down with the kids, but
Mhm.
we do, and so now we've decided we made a rule not to fight in front of the kids, but we're like I have a little bit of Italian in me apparently, and we took a DNA test, so I'm not sure, but I've been told this all my life, and so we've used it as an excuse for the passion in our
Yes.
family.
Isn't
Yeah.
that always the truth, though?
Yeah,
It's an excuse.
it's an excuse, and so you know, when my wife, I don't know where she gets it from, but we definitely both have passion, but then we forgive each other, and it works out.
Well, that's a
That's
marriage.
marriage.
Now, Josh, you're in the same boat I am. There's only women in my house.
Yeah,
Then my wife
2 little
and my
girls.
2 daughters.
yeah,
And I had to have the conversation with my wife, and I had to have the same conversation with my daughters. No matter what they've heard or they think, I'm not a mind reader.
right.
So I need to be told.
Yeah.
You know, I tell my wife all the time because my wife, you know, we always talk about love languages as acts of service. Mine's physical touch. Doesn't mean intimacy, but it just means physical touch.
Yeah.
I'll be driving down the road, and my wife will rub my arm. I'm like, oh wow,
That's nice.
gets my attention. Yeah, it is.
Right,
It
right.
is. But I always said, so you need to communicate to me. You know, and so my wife's always been that way. But it's funny, the dishes has always been like a what do you call it? Like a detente. It's like sometimes they'll pile up, and I'm like, oh, that's a hint. You know, it's like the subliminal message is like, I'm not doing those. You need to do them.
Right.
And I do them, like you said, Josh. Everything else is better.
Yeah. Well, and when you have small kids, like Justin and I do, and you remember this, I'm sure,
Oh,
Tom.
well.
You have to understand what your wife is dealing with all day long. Like, how many times have you been with your kids, just you?
Yeah, so she's had to work Friday, so it's just me and the kids, and she'll come home, and I'm like, take these kids.
Yeah, it's
get
work.
these kids away from me.
It is work.
And I get in my head. I never share it with her, but I get so frustrated when I get home from like an 8-hour day, and she's like, do this. I'm like, I just worked all day.
Yeah.
But when I get that Friday with the
Right.
kids, I totally understand. I
Oh
go,
my
how do you
gosh.
do this every day? Like, I would probably lose my mind. My wife, no, she's watching. She's a saint. She
It's
is a
work, you
saint.
know? I think men have a problem in general with empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a hard time trying to feel what other people are feeling. And I think that in a marriage, it's so important to at least do your best to put yourself in their shoes, you know,
Yeah.
and understand what they actually have to go through, right?
Well, and I think that relationship, and that's one of the things I'm in right now with my wife. It's just us again. So as the girls moved out and they left our home, it was just us, and we had to go back and we had to figure that out because we're older now.
Right, yeah.
And so what was working when we were younger, before kids, and in the midst of children, I always say children are great, you know, divergent or a great, you know, I mean, they have a principle of divide and conquer.
Right.
So you're always playing that game when you have little kids.
Yeah.
And I go, so sometimes you have to rekindle that relationship when you get older. And like you said, now, you know, like my wife's got chronic illness, you know, and so it takes a little more effort. I'm older. So we have to kind of like, you know, communicate a little more nowadays than we may have even needed to when we were younger. And you know, sharing things, you know, and she's expecting, how do you feel? You know, nowadays it's like, how do you feel? And men aren't great at sharing their feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because what are we told when we were young?
Suck it up.
Suppress. Yeah. You don't cry, boy.
Don't cry.
Yeah.
Or I'll give you something to cry about. But isn't that what the world tells us?
Yeah.
You know, and you rub some grass on it. How many times have we heard that?
Yeah.
We thought grass was a miracle
Yeah,
cure.
walk it off. No matter how bad
Yeah.
it hurt, your leg could be falling off, but walk
Right.
it off.
And so as our wives look at us for that, you know, connection emotionally, some guys just kind of turn that switch off, which is not the right thing to do, guys.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
That's true. So, let me ask you guys this, and I could ask both of you this. What do you think? Because you, Tom, we share an office area. Your office is next to mine, and I know that you counsel a lot of young men, and then you are a young man yourself, Justin, and you also probably talk to a lot of guys your age. What do you think young men are dealing with the most right now? Like, what is it? Is there anything going on in life? Like, we were talking about lockdown. You know, some men they're at the office working, and then all of a sudden they have to be at home, and they have to work from home, and then it seems like that leads to isolation, which leads to other issues. Have you guys seen anything?
The lack of men community. It's if you don't have a hobby, you don't have a men's group. Church for us, of course, has provided that for us, but I think it can happen in all avenues. If it wasn't for my basketball community, things like that, my golfing community, I would lose it in the isolation. And we all know a man alone is not good. So during this time, I'm noticing a lot of men, they're struggling with more lust because they're only at home on their phones watching.
Right.
You've seen the Instagram Explore page. If you don't have a community telling you that, hey, stay away from that, it's going to cause problems in your home.
Right.
You're going to fall to it. So I've seen a lack of community. Guys don't have other guys that they can talk to. And that's why I'm so passionate about this show we're going to launch, because it gives, if you don't have that person in your life, you can tune into us and talk about some men stuff. Chime in. You can text message into it. It's I think men need community, and we don't have those true friendships in our men groups. Half my good friends, all I do is make fun of them, right?
Right,
Like it's so hard to open up and have another man that you can talk to. It's hard.
Well, I like that you say that, because I do believe in my heart that men need to have an outlet.
You do.
Because we work, we have all these things on our minds. I think that our wives, and I don't want to complain or anything like that, but I think that our wives have a hard time understanding all of the thoughts and pressures that are on our minds daily, you know, taking care of the family, providing for the family, making sure that work is good, because if work isn't good, then you can't provide for your family.
Yeah.
These are big issues for men, and we hold on to these things, and we go home and we ruminate and stress about these things at night. I think that's why we like to play video games or do something
100%.
else, right?
100%.
But going out and golfing with friends, that might seem like a vain thing that we're doing, right? It might seem like it has no real purpose, but it does. It really does, especially when you're with other guys. And so, ladies, let your guy golf. Let him do it occasionally. If they're doing it all the time and they're not spending time with the family, that's a
balance.
problem.
Yes, balance.
I think you should definitely spend as much time with your family as you can. But
And guys need to respect their families.
yeah,
Because I'm like you guys. Like, you know, if you ask my wife and my girls, there are times that I can get carried away with the Xbox. And my wife came up and said, we need to solve this. So I went away and came back to her with a method. I go, if I ask you for permission to play on my Xbox, is that okay? She goes, yes, but you got to ask the girls too. So I had to ask 3 people. You know, and if
that's cool though. I mean, that is humble, you know, and I like that.
Yeah. So as we do need a hobby, it needs to fit in with them too. And I think your wife's, you know, gals, if you're out there, be open and honest with your husband too, because realizing it is. Because sometimes my wife is like, yeah, sure. And then maybe I'll ask Taylor, and she's like, sure. And then Tessa's like, hey, what about we do this? And I'm, you know, so it's like, you know, I need all 3 lights to be green.
Right.
And so, but they can tell you that when they had a opportunity to sit down, let's do this, I did it.
Yeah.
Tessa and I went to grab something for eat the other night. And I just said, hey, you want me to go? She goes, yeah. So I popped in the car and we went over to get something to eat. I think the worst thing that men do at this time is isolate themselves. And now you can isolate yourself when we aren't locked down.
Right.
That men are notorious at that. And one of the
Absolutely.
other things that men are notorious at, make an excuse. You hit it. How many, you know, the gyms will show you that. I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to get in shape, right?
Right.
And, you know, gals will do it too, but men will do it. And so they'll start out a something and then realize it's not easy, right? Sometimes we look for the easy way, and then we give it up. We
So-
move away.
It's funny that you talk about isolation, because yesterday I woke up and I was tired. I was very tired. And my body and my mind were telling me to go and rest and get away and isolate, really. But I had a responsibility. I was speaking last night, and I didn't have the choice to do that. I had a responsibility, and we have responsibility of work, and we have responsibility of the ministries that we do and the things that we have committed to, right? And fulfilling those commitments. And I think that those commitments are so important, because yesterday I could have taken a day and rested, but maybe I would have taken a day and rested and watched too much TV, or would have got on Instagram, like you said. I love how you mentioned those little things that seem like they're not threats, and then your mind starts going into a direction that you don't need it to go, and then all of a sudden, you know, you could be in a place where you don't want to be.
Exactly.
And it's the little
And-
things to lead you to big things.
Yeah. It always starts with something small,
Always
and
small.
even the small isolation is what leads to a bigger isolation.
Right.
You isolate in one little way, and then you realize you've isolated from your marriage, your friendships, your workplace, and now you're alone. And the devil loves that, doesn't
Yeah.
Well, and two, and I like working with guys, but the one thing guys will do is they'll give you an excuse. That's why I can't do that.
Right.
Everybody wants to diet until you say, okay, here's what it is. And I think, well, that's hard. I always tell people, they ask me to write down a diet or a workout, I write it down and go, no, that's the easy part.
Right.
The easy
Yeah.
part's to write it down. The hard part's to do it. So I always tell guys, and what you said, Josh, is very important, because what you're saying is responsibility, but I think it leads into something else called discipline.
Discipline, yeah. It's
And
huge.
that's something I love to tell people, because one of the things a lot of young guys are doing nowadays is they feel they got to be instant achievers.
Right.
They got to go out and light the world on fire no matter what they do. And there comes a lot of burden, and then there becomes anxiety, which leads to depression. So I tell people, just make it simple. And it just starts in the morning. Like Josh, I've told you, I always just start with the great way to start the day, and that's fire starters. Then I start with my journal. And I love about my journal, it has little sticky things in it that I can remind myself, because like it or not, when you get older, you start forgetting. The only thing I hate is when I put notes to myself in these pink and blue, orange colors. I put them on the refrigerator, because that's the first place I go.
Right.
And it reminds me when I see it, then my wife will move it to the side of the refrigerator, and I'll never look at that. My wife will go, why didn't you do this? I go, well, there was a sticky note in the refrigerator and it's gone. She goes, I moved it to the side. I go, never look there.
Right.
Yep.
I go, so it's that working it out again. I'm disciplined.
As much as I hate the idea, I know that I need structure. And discipline is basically having a structure and
Yes, it
following
is.
through on it,
Yeah.
right? Setting up a structure in your life and following through on it. And so when you wake up and read Fire Starters, it's great. It's awesome. It's a good book. My dad actually wrote this book. I like this book a lot. But and we did the cover. It was fun. But it's developing this daily discipline. It's just the act of doing it is
Mhm.
actually making you stronger, I think, in your other decisions as well. When we talk about reading the Bible, and we talk about prayer, and we talk about going to church, and we talk about getting involved in things, and we talk about other commitments, maybe it's to friends or to family, it's about committing then and following through. We have an old saying around here that you throw your hat over the fence. And when you throw your hat over the fence, it means you have to go over the fence to get it. It's a commitment thing, right? You commit and then figure it out. And I think that that's really what causes us to not only be busy, it's a good busy, it's a productive busy. It keeps our minds in the right place, right? Sometimes just figuring out what to do in life is the hardest thing. And so if you just choose something and you stick with it and you stay consistent with it, and my dad's been speaking this to me my whole life, and you guys we've all talked about this, is just having that consistency. And Tom, obviously you learned a lot about discipline in working out. Like if you became Mr. California, and in doing that, you had to be extremely disciplined. You had to wake up and you had to work out when you didn't feel like it. You had to eat, probably when you didn't feel like it, because you had to eat a ton of protein. And
It's
all
that
that stuff.
discipline could be an extremism too.
Right.
Because I mean, when I was competitive, and being in the gym was my physical job, that's how I made a living.
Right.
I would start to look at that as the number one part of my life. Now, I did a lot of things wrong when I was young, and that was one of them, because I boxed people out.
Right.
Actually, if they took my time, I thought they were stealing from me. It's like, this is the time I could be eating or working out, and you really want my time. So it made me something I didn't want to be. And so, but it was discipline. So sometimes discipline can take you over the edge. I think structure in life should start out with just like the easy things, the ABCs.
Yeah.
Right. ABCs is, finding your priorities, like you said,
Yeah.
and waking up in the morning and putting things in place that are going to put you in the right direction.
Priorities. I
Priorities.
love that, because how many of us we're not even intentional about listing our priorities. Like we think we know, right? But do we really know? Like, I think if I asked a lot of guys, hey, what's the number one priority in your life? And depending on where they're at physically, they'd probably say something different.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. If you're at church, you're going to say, my number one priority is to serve God, right? If you're at Disneyland, my number one priority is to protect my kids,
Yeah.
right? Like your actual priorities will change. They shouldn't change, but they do. And so I think like listing your priorities and sticking to those is huge. It's huge. It's really huge. So let me ask you this, Tom. We talked about young guys and what they deal with, and I think a lot of it is structure and discipline, and I think that that's something we could all work on. But what about older men who have had a lot of structure and discipline in their lives, but now they're struggling with other things, health, loneliness, just aging in general? Like what advice would you have for men that are older?
Well, and I think some of the advice kind of parallels younger men and older men, because I have a group of guys around me that are older than me, because I always do believe that you should have younger guys. I'm blessed to have a relationship with you and Justin, and I also have guys that are a lot older than me. Phil Welch, 83, 85, just had triple bypass.
Yeah.
And a guy like Lewis Jones, who used to be a warden in a prison. These guys speak into my life. But one of the things that older guys go through is, hopefully if they still have their spouse around them, they still have community, but they may have retired from the job. So purpose is a huge thing that men need.
Yeah.
Men need purpose. And as I talk to guys all the time, they're getting young and old right now. A lot of people lose their purpose because they lost their job. But I told people, use these times to do something. As an older person, I said, find younger people that you can pour your life into in expectancy, because I think we know in a book it says that gray hair and wrinkles have been kind of gotten at a cost.
Right.
That
Yeah.
means you got wisdom.
Right.
You've got gray hair and wrinkles because you've lived life and you have some wisdom. So younger guys should be hopefully flocking to that. And I says, the older guys, put yourself out for that. So you can still have relationships, because I think relationships are the key to life.
I 100% agree with that.
And so even during this time, when people say, well, I can't do anything, I can't go out, I go, we provide virtual opportunities. I do a virtual Bible study or just community 3 times a week. And people come into it. So there's not a problem if you're at home being old, or you're at home because you don't have a job, or at home because there's a stay-at-home order, just any of that. But you can be involved in a community, because this virtuality, we all connect. We all have a community. But then if you want to come out and meet people in person, do that too. So older guys, like me, I've never had a health problem that is getting me like the one now. I have a heart valve problem. So as I've got other people around me who have already been there, it really is a blessing to me. So older guys, I tell to try to find an outlet to pour into younger guys. I have a man cave this Saturday for anybody. Check me on my Facebook page, and it's virtual. But I've got a younger guy talking about the beginning of his life, and an older guy talking about towards the end of his life. But purpose is the key. Because my friend Phil Welch will tell you he had a triple bypass because he still has things to do on this earth. He's got a son who's kind of a rock star, and he's got grandkids, but he still feels he's got a purpose, and his purpose is to fulfill his mission on this life.
Definitely.
And he sees purpose filling in with young guys.
Yeah.
So I think
cool.
older people still need a purpose. And I have Lewis Jones, who volunteers and mentors people in of course, Lewis is 80-some years old, but he mentors guys that are 90.
Yeah.
That are in Alzheimer's. So he goes and spends time with them. So you can always find a purpose, just changes.
The value of life experiences is huge.
Unmatched.
Really, it is. And when you think of life experiences, I mean, Tom, you probably think in your life there's a number of successes and there's a number of failures.
Absolutely.
And you can learn from both, and you can share that wisdom with younger guys, and you do that. And I appreciate that. I've learned a lot from you, and I've learned a lot from my
100%.
dad and Pastor Hector, these guys, these older men that are around us. And I appreciate that a lot, and I lean on that. And there's a comfort level for us younger guys when the older guys are around, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
it feels good.
I think it's one of the biggest words of advice to people, young men our age, that we can count how many times has this man and your dad, Pastor Ron, have said, this is how this is going to end. This is how this is going to work out. And when us young guys will be like, they don't know what they're talking about. They're getting old. 100% of the time.
Yeah.
It happens exactly like they say. And it blows my mind. It's the same thing. Like our parents have told us stuff for years. And our teenage years, we neglect it, right? Like, no, I don't need to do that. My dad told me to save money, put $25 away. My whole life, he told me to do that. And then I become an adult, and I go, man, how much money would I have had if I would just put $25 every paycheck?
What's the old saying? The older we get, the smarter our parents get.
Oh, yeah. Right. It's true.
Their advice. Josh, I love my relationship with you. I met you when you were 14, and now you're 40, right?
Yeah.
But you're teaching me new things. I mean, this whole idea about podcasting has opened my eyes to a whole new method of just life experiences with other people. And so what you young guys bring is huge for us old guys. And Justin, I remember the first time I met you. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we connected because we're both Green Bay Packer fans.
Right.
But it wasn't just the connection walking into a room. The connection came a few months later when we had an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I really felt that God put on my heart Justin Greer. And I asked people, I go, I've got an opportunity for somebody to participate in a event with me, and I really think Justin could do it. Remember that?
Yeah, the story goes, it's crazy because the way I'd heard of Pastor Tom in the church for a long time, but I was just doing my thing in a college group, and I always, like, if there's an up-tempo worship song, I would dance and have fun. I was serving in the youth. And he comes to me, he goes, I've been praying all day. I told God, I'm not going home till I find this person. And I go, what? And he goes, yeah, we need someone to dance for our youth. And he shows me this video of a guy jumping up and down, just dancing for kids. And I remember thinking, like, I do that at the club all the time. I'm not about to dance for some little kids. And I used to do at the club. And I finally went, like God said, if you could do it for all those people out there, you can do it for my children. And I go, yeah, I can do it, Pastor Tom. And then the rest is history. We ended up getting a shot. Pastor Ron saw me, and it started I always cherish that moment because it started my career in ministry. It started me finding purpose. It led to everything. But it was just funny, such wisdom coming from him. This dude was in an office all day pacing, praying to the Lord, calling people. I'm not going home because God's going to show me this person.
Well, I was in charge of the children's ministry, and I wanted to bring something new. I had this idea, and so I'd call people, and they'd say, that's Justin Grimm. And I go, I don't know Justin. I remember calling Brad Lawson. I go, could you call Justin and see if he'd come meet me? And your car broke down, remember?
Oh yeah, the car. I forgot. So on the way, the devil's real.
So I looked at Brad, and I go, go pick him up.
Yeah.
Brad went and got him, picked him up, and so I showed. I go, Justin, I'm not going to say another word. I'm going to show you something. Press the button, and it had this experience. I go, now who does that remind you of? And he said, me.
100%.
And I go, hey,
That's
do you want an opportunity to do that? And then we just started.
That's cool.
But that's why I love being around young guys.
Yeah.
You know, and I tell older guys, we still have that.
Right.
You know, we may not be the doers anymore, but if we get an idea, we could pass it on to the doers.
Well, it's interesting. I see a lot of young people. They're doing their YouTube thing. They're doing their social media influencer thing. And they're getting really good at showing a certain side of themselves. And it looks good and it looks appealing. But I don't know, and I'm not singling anybody out. I'm not thinking of anybody specifically, but I don't know how much substance there is in young people's lives.
Yeah.
And I think we get the substance by learning from our elders. We get the substance by following the advice of people who have been through it, and even friends and even community. And that's what's cool about this community is we have a community of people who are real, who are authentic, who struggle, and we all talk about our struggles openly. We don't give too much information because that'd be weird, but we do as much as we can, and we try to help each other, build each other up. And I think that as older men or younger men or wherever you are in between, we all have a role in that.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage you guys to hitch your wagon to these guys, to talk to these guys, to reach out to them. That's what's cool too, is we're all accessible. You can find us online. You can find us right here on Facebook, you know. And you can talk to us, and we will be more than happy to help however we can.
And real too.
Yeah,
I think that's real important for men. Now, men, I think when you get into a community, part of it's feeling comfortable or vulnerable in it, and then being real, because we have the same chemical that drives us, which is testosterone.
Right.
Makes us aggressive, makes us experience life, and one of the things that we don't like to do is let down our guard. But I think it's important when men do let down their guard because it makes you able to learn and change. You know, pride gets in the way for men. I see that all the time, and it comes in a myriad of different flavors and colors.
Yeah.
And humility is one of those things that puts you in a place where you can learn from a young guy. That's why I love learning from you and learning from you and my friend Seth Parker. It's like, you know, I think when you get to a point and say, I know it all, it's a huge... that's a vulnerable area to be in.
It is, yeah.
Because I think there's one of the things that I like to do is continue learning. And I keep telling that to the older guys. Don't stop, because sometimes older guys can get stuck in their ways. Whether you heard you can't teach an old dog new tricks,
Right.
I think you can. I think the old dog has to be willing to learn new tricks.
And I'm excited to learn from your daughter. She's 21 years old, but she's in a great place right now, working for the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro and those guys. Like, I really want to sit down with her and learn. And so for a man to, you know, sometimes look at younger people and think, oh, I have nothing to learn, you do have something to learn, because pretty much anyone that's involved in something that's successful has something to teach you. And so I always look forward to opportunities to learn, and so hopefully we can get some good advice from her. But
Tessa, I know you're watching. I take full credit for all your success because
credit.
I taught you that in 8th grade basketball.
Basketball.
there you go.
I taught you that.
And that's what I love about you guys being young dads. You know, because the parents, you guys both experience it when your children are born. They don't come out with instruction manuals.
No, they don't.
And they're all so different. You know, Justin's got 4 coming on the way, right?
Yes, 4.
You know, he's going for a basketball team.
I'm going for the LeVar Ball. I want 3 in the league.
And Josh has 2 daughters. and the fun thing is experiencing parenthood. You know, and being open a book and celebrating their successes and failures.
Yeah.
And I think parenting is just an amazing opportunity for another gift, because that season doesn't stay with you forever.
Yeah.
And the thing that you get to be at a point now, as I always tell both my girls now, that I'm in a coaching mode. I'm more their coach.
Yeah.
You know, I parented them.
Right.
I put all I can into them. Now they're adults.
Well, it's fun talking to you about your successes and, you know, the things that you went through raising 2 daughters, and I'm raising 2 daughters. And it's like, you know, it's really eye-opening to have people in your extended family that can help you raise your own family.
Yeah.
So that's why community is so important.
100%. I go to Pastor Tom with all the raising kids questions. I always go to him. You look at all the men we have on our staff here, they have wonderful kids who have turned out successful, great, and still have a passion for the Lord, which I think is important because it's not like they all became pastors.
Right.
No. They're all in their field.
Yeah.
They still love the Lord, and I want my kids to have that freedom. So I've asked this guy so many questions about. So how did you do this? Like how did you you have amazing girls? How did you do this? I need help.
And it's not like you have it down. My wife and I always say that we're never going to say something because anything can happen.
Yeah.
And I do believe in my girls. And I
Well,
think
the Bible talks about kids being arrows, right? And you
Yes.
shoot them off into their space. Apparently, my dad shot his arrow straight up, and it came right back down. But
Well, that's why I always
It
love
happens.
my kids. My daughter Taylor's in Orange County, just doing great. My daughter Tessa's was in Thousand Oaks, moving into Nashville. A lot of people go, so when you move to Nashville, I go, I never planned to chase my kids around,
right,
the California or the world.
right.
I mean, it is. I'm proud of their success, but I'm just as excited about what God has for me.
You can always
and where
visit.
it has it.
You can always visit a lot.
Amen.
Yes, you can.
You just need to get
It-
a frequent flyer
Yeah.
credit card.
and I always tell the husbands, and when I do weddings for young people now, I always tell them to celebrate each other's success and failures.
Mm.
And I think that's important for marriages too, because you got to realize you're going to have some failures or you're going to have some successes,
Right. Yeah.
and be open in marriages. And I always go back to the Bible, which I do believe is the source of everything. And I go back to Genesis chapter 2, where it says Adam and Eve in their original garden were naked and not ashamed.
Mm.
And I think marriages need to be at that place.
Yeah.
It needs to be that environment where you're that close, where you feel comfortable talking about your successes and maybe your hopes and dreams, and be able to talk it out with your spouse.
Yeah.
Because they may sound ridiculous in the beginning. My friend Phil Welch talked to his young son when he was 13 years old and said, Brian, you need to learn a skill because I don't think you're going to make a living playing a guitar. And of course,
man.
Brian Welch,
Yeah,
Phil
all right
shares
for
that.
himself.
Yeah, playing a guitar.
yeah.
But so I
That's tough.
That's funny.
I know, but I'm just saying, I think those real life experiences with raising children, being proud of them, but also being proud of what your spouse and you have. My wife and I, Tiffany, are excited about this new journey that we're on. And I'm excited about her career. She's excited about mine. I think I think life should be exciting no matter until God has a plan for us to transition to heaven.
Absolutely. Well, these guys will be doing their man show starting next Thursday at 3:00
Yep.
on the dot. It'll be live. You can always rewatch, but if you can catch it live, that's cool too. I know some of us are working. Some of us are working at home, so you can put it on in the background. I don't know, but anyway, don't
Don't get
make
fired.
Sure don't get fired. Don't walk away from your responsibilities. But anyway, I'm excited to have these guys. I'm
Yep.
excited
Love
that
it.
we're
Thank
going to
you,
be
Josh.
continuing to build a network of shows here for you guys.
Yes.
This is for you. This is for you, for the community, for the family at large. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.